Hi, everyone. I'm Manisha, the founder of Modulo, and today I have a very special treat for you. I teleported from YouTube, Science Mom and Math Dad. If you haven't heard of them yet, they are one of the most popular science programs and also math programs now for middle school students. It's secular, mastery based, just really high quality content that's engaging, promotes critical thinking, and then they have lots of really great materials outside of the video lessons that are multisensory and can bring in different types of skills and ways your children like to learn. And everything I've ever read about them has just been overwhelmingly positive in homeschooling communities, which is a rarity. And so I am a little bit starstruck. I'm so happy to have them here. So welcome, Jenny and Serge. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much, Manisha. We're
Thanks.
glad to be here.
Indeed.
Amazing. Yes. So, okay. Well, first of all, you guys have an amazing science and math background, but I would love to kind of just dig into how you got into this career path because you have a really successful YouTube channel. How did it get started?
Honestly, it was not really planned. I mean, when I was in high school, YouTube did not exist. It was not something I ever envisioned myself doing. But when my oldest son was in second grade, I was volunteering in his classroom. I was the at-home parent at that time, and Serge was teaching math at a university. And his second grade teacher just mentioned sort of offhand that she'd had to drop a lot of her science activities that she used to do because of the new testing requirements. And that broke my heart a little bit because I have a master's in molecular biology, plant science with a molecular biology emphasis. And I've always loved science. And I thought, oh, that's kind of terrible. And I asked her, can I bring in like a science demonstration each week and just give me 15 minutes? I'll do something really fun for the kids so they get a little more science. And she said, sure. And that grew pretty quickly. Other teachers saw what I was doing and said, "Hey, do you wanna come into my classroom too?" And then the next year, each teacher that I'd visited said, "Well, even though we don't have your kids, do you wanna keep coming?" By the end of that year, I had 1 day a week. I was teaching part-time at Nevada State College, a GRE prep class, but then I had 1 day a week that was my volunteer day where I would go to the school with my kids, and from opening bell to closing bell, I would just visit. I visited every single classroom in the elementary school and would do science demos just kind of back to back. And it was so much fun. I loved it. And I remember having this moment um, where I thought, you know what, I really wanna switch. Like I want to have my volunteer passion be my paid job because this is just so great. Teaching GRE prep was also rewarding, but not in the same way. So I gave notice at Nevada State College and I started a YouTube channel. I started my Patreon page and I said, I've got these demos that I've done that are really engaging and I'm going to see if I can share that with a wider audience.
You
And
even earned a special nickname.
oh, that's right. Where does Science Mom come from? So my name in my son's classroom had been Andrew's mom, and I would come in to help with reading before I started doing science. Everyone was like, "It's Andrew's mom, who wants to go read with Andrew's mom?" And that was just what all the kids called me. And then when I started bringing science in, instead of calling me Andrew's mom, the kids started to call me Science Mom. So that's really how Science Mom started, was because of the nickname that these second grade kids gave me.
I love
Um,
it. And how did Serge get pulled into all of this?
Mm.
well, for about 4 years, yeah, no, for 5 years, I'd sort of teased him, like, "Oh, this YouTube channel will grow, and then I could hire you. We could work together full time on science outreach. Wouldn't that be rewarding and really fun?" And
Yeah, and I always said, "No, that's not gonna happen," because I loved my job as a college professor, but it actually did during the COVID shutdown. We ended up getting a bigger following, which eventually led to us even teaching full courses.
and maybe we should just back up a little bit, explain
Yes,
how
I
that
skipped
happened.
ahead a little bit here too. Yeah.
So there were rumors that my sister lived in Utah and called me and said, like, all the schools here, we think they're gonna shut down. And, Nevada was saying the same thing because of, and it was right at the beginning with, COVID numbers going up. And she told me just about how, like, what are people gonna do if they're home, their kids are home, they're supposed to be working remotely from home, but then their kids are home and the schools are just not prepared to do online instruction. And I thought, gosh, as a parent, I had a lot of empathy. Like, that's a really tough position to be in. So I told Serge, I said, we should do a 2-hour math and science live stream every day this week for like fourth, fifth grade kids just to try and help them out. So then the parents can know, like, okay, my kids are going to have some good, engaging educational experience for 2 hours and I'll have a chance to breathe and maybe just kind of get something done. And you were a little nervous because you'd only taught college. And
That's true. I hadn't taught at
and
that level.
yeah, and he said like, "Oh, I don't know about teaching like, you know, in elementary. I've never done that type of instruction." And I said, "Oh, you'll be great." And we just kind of launched into it. And at the time,
So was that
a
the
friend of
first
mine.
time you had built video content on YouTube, or you just kind of decided to step it up for the
No,
pandemic?
so I'd been making videos, but all pre-recorded for about
Mm.
5 years on YouTube. And we tried live streaming just once or twice, real short ones, but not my YouTube channel at the time had a few couple thousand subscribers, and
It really hadn't grown that much. We really thought of it as a hobby because we didn't want to get our hopes
yeah.
too high.
And in terms of like our tax returns, it was definitely a hobby because we spent more on it than we earned.
Wow. I mean,
um,
that's so interesting. I mean, I want to hear every single detail, but there's just like so much here. I want to unpack it a little bit. So you meant you had actually started 5 years previous to the pandemic, and you had already, I mean, because I remember you were already a bit well known when we discovered Science Mom.
mhm.
And so, but then it kind of, then you decided to do these live streams, and that was the point where it kind of really took off and started turning into a business.
Yes, yes. And the first series that we did, and I had a friend who said like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, Jenny, if you want to be live streaming 2 hours every day, like you have to put some limits on this, or it's just going to take over your life. Like, are you going to do this for like
I notice
the
a
rest?"
pattern here with you and volunteering.
So I told her, I said, "Well, okay, if there are fewer than 1,000 people that watch our live stream, we'll just do it for 1 week and it'll just be like a nice bridge. It'll help some people. It'll be a positive impact for those, 1,000 people. But then, I'll focus on like, I had this other video series about the atmosphere that I was working on. Um, but then it was a lot bigger than 1,000 people. We the Facebook post that I did where I shared that we were doing this free quarantine series, it got shared more than 100,000 times. And
Wow.
we had, I think it was, I mean, if you look at the views, I think it was something like between Facebook and YouTube, because we live streamed to both Facebook and YouTube. Um, there was like 30,000 people that showed up for the first one. And then it trailed down. There were fewer and fewer as it went on, and schools kind of figured out what they were doing. But we did 52 lessons of quarantine. And for us personally, that was kind of a wild experience
I
because
bet.
Serge was still teaching.
I had my full-time job
Yeah.
teaching math.
So he had 3, like,
Yeah.
upper division college classes that he was teaching online, trying to figure out how to, like, transition that online. We had our 3 kids who were home, and then every day we would throw together, like, "Okay, what are we gonna talk about tomorrow?" I would make a one-page worksheet, we would throw together some ideas, and then the next day we would live stream for 2 hours and then repeat. It was really
Amazing.
busy.
I mean, it takes time to prepare. And then also, I mean, your kitchen must have been a mess with all those chemistry and biology experiments happening.
It was
Wow.
chaotic, but also incredibly rewarding. We heard from
Mm.
so many families that just the pr and, a lot of times we would finish a lesson, I would think to myself a little critically like, "Oh, man, that didn't go as well as it could have. If I were to do it again, it could be so much better." But at the same time, I was like, we're showing up. We're gonna be here Monday through Friday every day, and we did 52 lessons of the quarantine series. And I had so many parents reach out and send us emails to say that during that chaotic time, they appreciated so much like their kids needed a routine, a sense of normalcy, and being
Mm.
able to know that every day they'd be able to watch Science Mom and Math Dad, learn some things about math and science. He would sing a song, and and there were, like it was
Wow.
really kind of funny how there were so many kids who really wanted to hear the song and other kids who didn't, and in the chat, you could just see this, like, kind
Oh,
of
so
battle. "Sing the
good.
song, no, don't sing the song," and then when he did, they'd be like, "Yay."
It's like the song you love to hate, right?
Yeah, very
Dad, what are you doing?
Yep, exactly.
Oh, wow, marvelous.
When quarantine finished, we just did that all as like a service just to try and help people out. And so still at that point, Science Mom was a hobby. We had enough people following us that I said to Math Dad, I said to Serge, like, hey, we actually might be able to do this now because we've got like several thousand people who have been asking, like, well, what are you going to do next? We would like to do more things with you. And our Patreon had grown too. Like, Patreon now was not enough income to maybe buy a couple science supplies each month. It had grown to be more substantial. Still not enough to like support us entirely and replace Serge's job, but it had grown a lot. And you were still a little bit unsure, but then we did like an animal science camp over the summer, and that was the point where enough people signed up for that we thought, okay, this actually could be a viable way to support ourselves and continue doing what we love to do. And then, do you want to talk about you took a leave of absence?
That's right. Well, so we taught for one, we taught a chemistry course together. I was still doing my job, but then after that, I did take a leave of absence
And we
and
did earth science.
we taught earth science. And yeah, it went really well. We had lots of great kids. I feel like that we have a lot of homeschooling families. The ones who really want to learn are self-selecting in. So I feel like we're getting the best of the best. And I absolutely love the excitement and engagement from those kids, and they're in the chat. They like interacting, and the group is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Wow, wonderful. Serge, I mean, I would love to hear, from your perspective as a parent, kind of looking at what was being taught in science and what's being, I mean, I know I used to teach in the public school, so I know it's like one science class a week. I mean, when you think about the kind of science you hope that your children will learn in school and what's there now, I mean, what's important to you?
Well, so the next generation science standards, the NGSS, that we all I think it's very polarizing. Some people love them, some don't. But I think that those it really is just a list of things to cover. And so I'm a huge fan. The implementation of them can be kind of tricky to
Well,
actually.
I
There are
don't
a
think
lot of
they're
them.
yeah, the next generation science centers I think are not as polarizing as the Common Core math. That's
Which
what
is what I
yeah.
dealt more
Sure,
with.
right.
But yeah, that actually communicating with parents about what they are and how to use them is something where the ball kind of got dropped in most places. Maybe I'm just speaking to myself, but I think a lot of families don't understand how useful they can be. Like these are the things we want to be able to do at each grade level, and we're just trying to standardize it. But it gives a lot of scope and just structure to teachers at every level and of both private and public schools. So I'm a big fan of those. The problem though is there needs to be a curriculum to go with them, and which is where Science Mom and Math Dad have been investing most of our efforts. So I absolutely love it when the kids get the chance to play and explore and ask questions of their own. So anything that is exploratory, that's going to get 2 thumbs up from me. But unfortunately, those are hard to come by and haven't been prioritized in the way that they need to be.
Absolutely. And I guess just to even go even deeper into this question, at Modulo, I think a lot about the point of learning different things. And math is one of those topics where what's the point of this comes up a lot. And in the traditional school system, you don't really get a lot of choice around what you learn and what you don't learn. So there's not naturally not a lot of thinking around why am I learning this? What is the purpose? And I'd be curious, from either of you to know like what's the purpose of learning science and maybe even some of the skills or ways of thinking that some of the children that have gone through your program have developed that you're especially proud of? What are those rewards beyond just getting a perfect score on your science AP exam?
For me personally, the reward of learning science is its own reward.
Mm.
I've always loved understanding how things around me work. And I feel like there's just a natural sense of awe and wonder and joy that I get from learning new facts about the natural world, especially. Life sciences have always kind of been my favorite, but
Mm.
I've loved every branch of science that I've studied. And that's something when I did school demonstrations was something that I really tried to share with the students I visited. And one of the first things that I did on YouTube was a Science Mom's Guide to Water series. And I would do some of those demonstrations in schools. And it was one of my favorite lessons that I developed because when I would come in and tell the kids, today we're going to learn about water, you'd visibly see some of the kids like, oh gosh. Because, they're hoping for like liquid nitrogen or fireballs, like something really
Right,
like
right. Not
different.
another water cycle demonstration. Are we going just back to the sewage plant? Right.
But then as I went through and did like, the gravity defying lid demonstration where you put a little plastic lid on a cup of water, you turn it upside down, and then you take your hand away, they're expecting all the water just fall out and it stays. As I started doing those demos, you could just see their eyes lighting up because they're realizing like everything they see me do, they can do when they get home because I'm not doing something with like, expensive, different, unusual supplies. And by the end of that demonstration, the level of excitement and like wonder and that they would have would just be huge, and the questions I would get would show that like they were really thinking and I had really sparked deep curiosity about a substance that they see all the time and they hadn't really been curious about before, but now they were, you
Mm.
know, and I it's so rewarding to me to feel like you can spark wonder and curiosity and have someone else experience that same drive of just deep hunger to understand more. That's
Mm.
really
And
the
you're
emails.
so exceptionally great at that, Jenny. I mean, maybe I don't know, either of you, maybe Sergio have some thoughts on that. I mean, what is it about Jenny that is so powerful in sparking that excitement and love of learning? And maybe,
Yeah.
we could offer some tips to other teachers. So where does that come from? Is it pure
She's absolutely genuine in her
Mm.
excitement for it. And when she's not on camera, she's also just curious about the world around her. She carries around this little jeweler's loop and she's always looking at these little plants, trying to figure out.
Can I just interject real fast?
Yes.
So this is a recent discovery of mine. Identifying mosses is really tricky if you don't have like you're not able to look closer because so many of their structures are a lot smaller. And I was looking at botanical loops and they're really expensive. Like you're looking at like 60 to like over $100 to get like a little loop. And then I discovered that a jeweler's loop, if it's 10x magnification and has, the triple jeweler's loop, it's like almost exactly as good as a botanical lens and only costs like 15 to $20. So I've had so much fun since I got one of those because there's so much that if you just look at the small details and make it big, it looks so different. It's like it changes the way you see the world.
Hmm. But yeah, that curiosity that she has outside of the being on screen, she carries into. But I mean, when you walk around the house, you've got wiring, you've got plumbing, you have appliances, and do you ask yourselves? Do you ask your kids? How do these actually work? Like, what are they accomplishing and what are the mechanisms involved? I mean, power's going into this. It must be doing something. But yeah, just by asking those questions, you're opening up all kinds of doorways for learning. But Jenny's also really good at saying, huh, I don't know, actually. She doesn't pretend when she doesn't know. And that just opens, I'm going to go research that and try to learn more about it.
Yes, genuine curiosity, genuine love for the subject, genuinely coming to teaching as a learner. All these things that I think are more challenging to find and sometimes in a traditional setting where you are under so much pressure to have your kids meet those standards. And let's dig in a little bit to the math program because I have only recently discovered Math Dad. It seems it's like your guys are producing a lot more content, and I feel like middle school math and high school math, there's a dearth of good resources out there because there's so many cool little adaptive learning apps for the youngers. You can find there's Dragon Box Algebra, which is so much fun, and Prodigy Game, and just all these different AI tutors, that once you started to get middle school and high school, just all the cute cartoon characters disappear. It becomes very either a textbook or, I won't name any names, but very multiple choices. So tell me a little bit more about MathStat. How old is the program? Is there more content under development? I just be curious to learn everything about it.
Yeah, so we have a middle school curriculum. It's actually an accelerated, so we call it grade 6 math and then pre-algebra, but it really covers grade 6, 7, and 8, and as well as then an algebra 1 class that follows. So if you take those 3 classes, you would finish, starting in 6th grade, you would then finish all the way through algebra 1 before high school, at which I know some people like to be on that track. And also, because they're accelerated, we sometimes have students who felt like they were behind, but were able to do some catching up. We use a really cool curriculum. And so this is the only way we could do it. We couldn't build it all ourselves. Like our science content, we actually do build ourselves.
Mhm.
And Jenny works like a machine, pretty much writes a textbook for each course worth of all doodle notes. But for the math courses, we use the Amplified Desmos curriculum, and about 3/4 of the lessons are done on screen with an activity, and maybe a quarter of them are paper-based, because that is an important skill. You can't really do math without getting your hands dirty, and you need to make sure you're writing things down and developing the written communication portion. But this curriculum is phenomenal. So the Desmo started out as just an online graphing calculator, but eventually they developed this curriculum, and it is so exploratory. Whatever the topic of the day is, whether you're trying to scale robots, and so you're actually typing in numbers, you're trying things, you're getting visual confirmation, and half the time the students, oh, how can I break this? What would be an interesting way? But in that process, they're also learning things. Ooh, what if I use a negative scale? What then? And oh, it actually works. It just inverts my robot. And but yeah, by giving them that chance to play, they're seeing what it is useful for right there in the lessons, as well as being able to practice afterwards. So our format is, there is an activity with the lesson. So we are on screen talking about it, and most of our lessons are available as recorded only. We do teach live courses occasionally, but usually they're only going to be available to purchase recorded lessons. But that has the advantage that you can pause and retry things, so it actually works out pretty well. But we teach a concept, we're on the screen. All right, everybody, give it a try. And they work through it, and then we're back in action. We go over a solution. And during the math classes, I get to be the teacher, and science mom
I
gets
sort
to be
of
the student.
play the role of the student.
In science classes, it's usually reversed
Mhm.
in the roles there. Yeah, so we work through the activity, and then afterwards, there are practice problems they can complete on their own. But yeah, I think the curriculum we use is just phenomenal, and it's out really well for a lot of students.
I've been really impressed with the Desmos curriculum and how hands-on it is, although I should give the little caveat that it works best for a student who has some good self-direction, because
Mm,
since it is most of it is online, where, you're watching the video, and then when we say, "Okay, pause and try it yourself," and they're doing an activity, and then we kind of guide them through the answer. If you have a self-directed kid who's willing to pause the video, take as long as they need to try it, they'll learn so much, and it'll be a really great experience. But if you have a kid who is going to watch the video, and then when we say pause and work on it, they'll like skip ahead, and then as we show the answers, they'll just do it with us. They're not going to learn as much.
for
So
sure.
it's, yeah, just kind of something to be aware of if parents are looking at it. It depends on the student.
That's such a great tip. And, at Modulo, we've been combining tutors with adaptive learning technology and videos. And we find that can work really well for certain types of learners who are less self directed, more just having a guide help, teach kids how to learn. And I think, and, I love the mastery based approach. Like, I think Angela Duckworth, who wrote Grit, just did a study on how they gave the same curriculum and children could work through it at their own pace. And everybody arrived at the end at the same time, even they were going faster and slower. And so I think that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I am curious to even learn a little more about your thoughts around different kinds of learners. I mean, I know that when I was in math class, I was an accelerated math student, but the way I learned math was certainly different than others in my class. I had a very difficult time with standardized exams. For example, I really thrived in physics and calculus, but I had a lot of difficulty with geometry, and chemistry, by the way. So I guess I don't know how much feedback you're able to get from students because you are not teaching live, but I'm wondering, yeah, I mean, just the different kinds of math archetypes you've observed and how to support them through the curriculum.
Yes. Well, they do come in all different paces and ability levels and learning styles. And you might be an amazing math student all the way up through Algebra 1. You take the geometry class. This sounded like it might have been your experience, and it just didn't click, right?
Right.
And yeah, I've got to say, geometry, I found it to be quite difficult because it was a change of pace, although it was also one of my favorite classes in hindsight. Maybe at the time, I didn't quite appreciate it as much, so I can relate a little bit there. Um, I think mm, mm, at least half of the battle, though, is in the fundamentals. If if a student has a strong foundation, and I'm talking about addition facts and multiplication facts, uh, then they're poised to be able to think about the right things during class. If they don't have the foundation down, it's kind of similar to trying to read where you have to sound out every word. Like that would be much more tedious. It would be very difficult to learn to love to read if you had to sound out every single word every time. And so by getting that strong foundation down so that you're not using your mental bandwidth to do the little calculation, then you're thinking about the parts of the problem that are interesting and that are being focused on in the lesson. I think then you're set up for success. That doesn't mean you're going to understand everything through the first time, because there are still some challenging ideas that took thousands of years to develop mathematically. But that's the one thing that I can say is universally to all parents: make sure you've got those fundamental things down. And our kids didn't like it when we'd sit down with flashcards and go through them, but it helped a lot. And, and once our kids had those basic facts memorized, they did much better in their math classes in school. So just speaking as parents here, and I've seen the same thing so many times with others as well. But and yeah, you can turn them into games. There are ways to make that fun,
Mm,
but but please don't neglect the foundations.
And
such a
I
great
want to
point.
speak just a little bit to what you asked about with standardized testing, because I do have experience, teaching the GRE prep class for a couple years at Nevada State College. Um, Test taking is really its own unique skill, and my opinion about
Mm,
the GRE and other standardized tests is that the best thing they assess is how good you are at taking a standardized test. Um, and it's tough because I can understand the desire to want to try and measure learning, and there are only a certain number of ways that you can do that in an efficient way that will scale to large people. And this, some type of test is kind of the best way for someone to try and get a snapshot of what's happening with learning. But there are for sure students who have outstanding comprehension and all of the things that we really care about that struggle with test taking skills. And in the GRE class that I taught, we spent a lot of time focusing on different test taking strategies and how those would help. But I still saw, from my own experience, students that I was sure were equally qualified to do graduate school, and some of them sailed through the test just fine, and others, it
Mhm.
was a huge struggle. And that's one reason why some graduate programs have kind of leaned away from the GRE, because if you look at data, proficiency on the GRE doesn't necessarily translate to proficiency in, in a professional capacity or in the real world or in graduate school.
For sure. I think you just put that so beautifully. But I was also a tutor for many years in New York City, very high end, ultra stress, get my kid up one more point on the SAT type of tutor. And I did really try to approach it like a game. This test isn't a measure of your ability. It's a measure of your ability to learn a system, and learning systems has value in life, even
Mhm.
if this particular test might not be a measure of your knowledge. And I really like that approach, stepping back a bit. I want to go into some of the most common questions that families ask me. And we kind of touched upon this a little bit, but I will say I think one of the biggest struggles for parents is just a kid who comes up and says, I don't see the point of learning math, or I don't see the point of learning science. How do you get over that initial hump of, hey, kid, let's just try watching a science mom, science dad video, or maybe you don't even know yourself. Like, I don't know if I can fully articulate what the point of learning math is, I mean, so I'd love to hear if you had to address that question with your own children, or, how does a parent navigate that one?
So I've got to share our middle child. I think because I was science mom and I was coming in and doing school visits, especially when she was in middle school, she made me promise that I wouldn't come to her school, not just her classroom, but her school at all, because that was just
Fair
too,
enough.
yeah, too much for
Yeah,
her. And I said, okay, I won't come to your school while you're in middle school.
the
But
Brangelina of math and science.
But I think because especially once, we became self-employed and started our business, because math and science was such a big part of what we did, she sort of had this natural, like, I want to define myself differently. I'm humanities kid. I like history and I like English, and I don't like math and science. And I felt like as a parent, I had to kind of let her take her own journey. I'm not going to force it on her, but at the same time, we would have conversations where I would try and explain there's just a basic level of literacy in both of these subjects that you need to have in order to maintain freedom of choice and options for yourself. If you completely shut down and say, well, I'm not going to learn any science, it's going to limit what you're able to do and what you're able to explore. And it's also going to make it so that you just don't understand as much of what's happening around you.
So the biggest takeaways from any math or science class, you're learning how to think. You're learning to solve problems. And that particular child and many others were quick to give up when something gets hard, and they need to learn, oh, I can actually do hard things. I can take the time to master something that may not be enjoyable to me, but that actually wasn't nearly as bad as it seemed at first glance.
Mm.
And any person who comes away from trying to learn something and has that sense of accomplishment, oh, I actually can do that thing that I perceived as difficult, like they have gained so much, and it opens up doors in all areas of life. But yeah, the tendency that some of us have to give up is one that we need to overcome. And certainly, whether you're going to use that bit of math knowledge or science knowledge or any subject of knowledge, just the act of sitting down, grinding it out, and overcoming it is huge. It's a personal development thing that we all need to experience, and we need to experience it regularly because I think as people, we have that natural inclination to take the easy way out, and that usually doesn't serve us.
So it sounds great. How do you communicate that to a teenager as their parent?
I just want to acknowledge that it can be tough. This particular kid of ours who, from a very early age, said, "I want nothing to do with science." Um, I was grateful that she had some teachers besides me who were able to teach
Mm,
her science because she was not in
yeah.
a place where she was gonna be willing to learn it from me, which was okay. But we also, had some times where we kinda butted heads about it, where I said, "Look, you don't have to be, like, on track to go to medical school or be, like, a research scientist, but you need to understand just these basic facts about chemistry and biology because they're everywhere." And I tried to come up with, kind of real life practical examples about, food safety and different things where these would kind of pop up and how just having some basic understanding would improve health and well-being. I don't know how successful those were, but that was kind of what I tried.
That's right. So every parent's going to struggle. My advice: celebrate every victory,
Yeah.
and yeah, try to keep the ratio of praise to complaints as high as possible, because negative experiences, unfortunately, can carry a lot of weight. I think a lot of people, almost everyone, has this tale of that one math teacher that was so bad, or one math experience, and it just kind of can derail. Uh, yeah, just change that trajectory of their love of learning, and even for an entire subject, so much. So yeah, try to keep the things as positive as possible. You'll thank yourself, and your child will thank you in the future for sure.
But it is a balance, right? Because you were just commenting about the importance of grit, of facing something hard and overcoming and how instructive that is, but then also saying, maybe too much grit might, you know,
Oh
turn
yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
away. So
If you're just
it's a
gonna
balance.
crack the whip all the
Absolutely.
time,
Yeah.
yeah.
I really like the phrase the zone of proximal development, where your student is in their brain is working in a way where thing is not too easy and it's not too hard. So they're able to have the excitement of the challenge without feeling completely stopped. And it sounds like you are also coming from this framework of the goal is the learning in and of itself. And you can celebrate the learning. You can celebrate, wow, you tried hard, even though that was a bit challenging for you, and now you have a new skill, without trying to be too condescending, which
Yeah.
can be tough as well. And I think, when another thing is just really important is leaning on other community members, especially in homeschooling, and a lot of homeschoolers have huge communities, which is great, and you don't have to hire a tutor. It can be another teenager or your friend, and sometimes that bond is just not so intense, so you can, it's just a little bit easier to listen to that person than your parents.
Yeah, for sure.
If you can ever get your child to be the one teaching someone else, I mean, that's when you really
Ooh,
master something, is when you
that's a
have to
good
put it
one.
into words where you can explain it to someone else.
Mhm.
I just have this idea of, like, the Lit Kid channel popping up in my head now. You're yeah, wow, such great advice. I wonder if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about dyscalculia, which I always have trouble pronouncing, and if you have any suggestions for parents whose children are struggling with that math challenge.
Really don't have a lot of great insights here. So my background is in mathematics. I don't have a mathematics education degree
Mm,
where no doubt that gets covered in greater detail. Uh, so I would say just a general parenting thing, maybe not even math, but yeah, obviously your relationship with your child is the most important thing, and the frustration that can come from those struggles is real, and never worth yeah, arguing or getting on someone's case to the point where there's problems like that. That's not going to serve anyone. So we were talking about cracking the whip a moment ago, and that just makes me thinking about regrets as a parent where I pushed too hard.
mm,
But so a little off topic, but yeah, if things are the student, yeah, just cannot process the numbers the same way. We all have brains that are wired differently, and what comes easy for one person is not going to come as easily for someone else. And just being aware of that, and then yeah, figuring out what works for your individual student. It's a journey, and that's another thing that we have to learn how to learn, and what works for one person may not work for someone else. So trying different things, and when you do find something that works, you celebrate it and try to see, okay, how can we build on that? But yeah, the number of difficulties and different styles that work or don't work for people is so big that all I can do is encourage you to experiment and
Mm.
be aware of, oh, this this worked well this session. We had a positive outcome, and we actually enjoyed ourselves, and try to recreate that as much as possible. Yeah, reframe expectations and pacing. Not everyone has to be at the same level, and if you adjust your expectations to be something more realistic, I think the possibilities for positive outcomes are much stronger.
Amazing. And I just so appreciate your transparency around knowledge of particular learning challenges. And I just want to add that your program has been really great for kids in Modulo who have dyscalculia. And I think a big part of that is because of the multisensory approach, and you can pick and choose from different tools and pace yourself. So, this idea of mastery based learning, moving at your own pace, self paced classes, I mean, that would have been just such a game changer for me in school because I just could not concentrate on a lecture. And
I
when I was
agree.
able to step outside and study on my own, no problem. I could learn the whole curriculum in, 2 days. But it was just hard sitting in that classroom, so that's great. Well, let's go back a little bit to science some more, since we have a famous science mom here. Um, so, okay, we're gonna go headlong into a bit of a controversial topic, which is secular science. I am a member of many secular homeschooling groups, and they are very, very particular about which science programs they recommend. There's huge diversity of people in the homeschooling movement from different religions, and even a lot of people, Christian, Muslim, Jewish people, also want secular science. You are kind of universally approved by these very picky groups. And I also say one of the really cool things about being part of a homeschooling group is that a lot of the parents are science professors and scientists, so they bring an amazing I mean, you have this incredible community vetted program. In any event, I would like to understand a little bit better, how you define secular science and what that means for your program.
I have to admit, because we had not homeschooled our kids before launching into Science Mom, when I created the Earth Science course, after that, I had a lot of people reaching out to me wanting to know, is your curriculum secular or neutral? And the way they were using the terms, I kind of quickly realized, like, I'm missing something here. I don't understand what people are quite meaning by this,
Mm,
because a lot of the parents who are religious who were asking if my program was secular, they seemed to be asking if I was hostile to religion, which didn't make sense to me. I'm like, so a little bit of personal background. I grew up religious, and I grew up in a religious household where my parents were also scientists. And my father, in particular, he just felt like there was no conflict there. That, if a God created the world, he did it through evolution, and that was fine. Like, I never grew up with this paradigm of religion and science being antagonists towards each other, and I couldn't quite understand why so many people seemed to have that. Um, and so I initially sort of tried to reassure a few of the people who emailed me, asking if I was essentially if I was hostile to religion, like, no, we're neutral. And then I realized that neutral meant an entirely different thing than I thought it meant. It meant that, like, you don't talk about evolution, you
mm,
just don't mention any topic that might be problematic for certain groups. And and then I kinda had to say, "Okay, wait a second, now I understand what these terms mean." We're definitely secular because evolution is a thing that, like, we know for sure has happened and is happening, and, if you think that that conflicts with your religious views, I'm sorry, I can try and kind of just tell you my beliefs that there isn't a conflict, but, it's something you'll have to figure out.
I think getting people to understand so when you hear science and whatever context, positive or negative, if you pause and just replace the word science with knowledge gained through logic and data, then finish the thought and see if it still makes sense and whether you're going to be critical of it or not. But yeah, science is just the knowledge gained from using logic and data. And I think when we realize that, then regardless of what our other beliefs are, like, oh, I'm actually okay with supporting knowledge that relies on data, logic, and yeah, if we're we want to progress as a society or as a person, like that's what we should be relying on.
Mhm. And as a species, our social structures are complex, and there are power dynamics at play. And knowledge gained through data, shouldn't be controversial, but it really can be. And we're seeing that especially with climate change and the way that really basic science that we've known for more than 100 years regarding carbon dioxide's effect on the atmosphere is being politicized in a way that is honestly kind of sad. I've been really disappointed to see some of the political impacts to climate change research over the last year. I'm sorry, I totally
Yeah.
derailed a tangent,
But
and I
No,
want
I mean, that's something I really wanted to go in with. You have your free course on earth science, and it is these are very tricky topics because you can take in something like climate change where there's overwhelming scientific consensus around it, and some scientists can come up and say, "Nope, it's all bollocks," and here's my study that shows it, and it creates a lot of confusion and discomfort. Um, and, and at the same time, here we are, people who love children and want to see a future for our children. And these are difficult realities, but realities we need to address. I mean, my personal opinion, I have to say, is that the reason that people are teaching neutral science, which if you're not aware of what it is, it's saying it's kind of presenting these issues as two-sided when, there's an overwhelming consensus around climate change and it's presenting it as 50-50 as opposed to like 0.0001% and
Mhm.
the rest. And I think a lot of that, or it's left out altogether. And I think a lot of that is due to consumer demand. There's a certain percentage of homeschoolers that don't believe in climate change and evolution, and people find that customers complain when those materials are taught, and so they eliminate them from their materials. And I think, you guys are really out there because you love science and you want to help people learn, and so you're not going to try to make an extra buck by
Well,
eliminating that from your curriculum. I don't know, maybe that's just my theory.
yeah, no, that's accurate. And I also one thing that I try to incorporate and whenever I can, we do a painting with the scientist class kind of weekly, and the other day we were talking about somehow the topic of ticks came up. Ticks is like, the little parasitic animals, and whether or not opossums reduce tick numbers. And if you just do a quick Google search online, you'll find all sorts of news articles and little headlines saying, opossums eat ticks, and they eat so many that they're like bringing down the tick population. So opossums are a great animal. And I delved just a little deeper into the study, and there's only one study that all those figures come from, and it turns out the study was really flawed. They put ticks on different animals, and then after like 4 days, they said, "Well, no ticks dropped off the opossum, so the opossums must have eaten them," and then they let them go. But opossums have a lower body temperature, so most likely the ticks were just still feeding on the opossum and hadn't dropped off because they have a lower temperature. Anyway, we had a great discussion about faulty conclusions and how, this fact that you see in the popular media, if you look at how this study was done, the conclusion really doesn't follow. And then follow up studies that have actually examined stomach contents of what opossums eat have shown it to be false. And I feel like as the more that we can kind of like teach how to think critically in classes, the better. And hopefully students will have the tools then to navigate the real world and evaluate, although it is challenging in our current digital landscape because especially with AI misinformation and things that really look like factual information that aren't, are becoming more and more common.
Mm. Yeah. Anything you wanted to add on to that search?
Yeah, that critical thinking. You kind of stole my remark there, but yeah, being able to look at an idea and think, oh, could that be false? Just step back and ask that one question each time. Then you're going to be in so much of a better position, able to at least assess your assumptions. And I do see these large language models being trained on data, and it's going to be harder and harder to tell the difference between fact and fiction. And I was quite shocked, by the way. During the lesson, I was incredulous. Like, no, science mom, it's everyone knows that they eat lots of ticks.
No,
And
they don't.
Yeah,
Opossums are still really cool animals, but they're
for sure. And we're so, I mean, and then there's the whole issue of social media and all of the, I think the news, we show all of these compelling stories. And now I think, especially in the US, things are very divided between the right and the left. So each side is constantly showing stories to shock the other side. And I often find myself not taking that distance to pull back and say, okay, is this an overarching theme? I mean, how much, there's so much suffering in the world, right? And is this suffering, the thing I need to really give most of my attention to, or underlying issues? And it can be very hard to get to step out of that kind of dynamic of shock and awe and really figure out what's going on.
mhm,
we're fighting against algorithms now.
yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. I do have a question about something which you might not be expecting, but I just can't stop thinking about what, like, a wonderful partnership the two of you have. I mean, just being able to work together. Like, you seem so in love and you have this family and you're also running a business together. I mean, does that just come to you naturally? What are some of your thoughts, to share with other couples or, partners on how to make that kind of relationship work?
Oh, thank you. We've always been best friends, and I'll say when we started the quarantine series, one thing that surprised me, it was a really busy time, and we were doing it just because we wanted to help parents who were home during the pandemic. But I remember the first time I got an email from a family saying, "Thank you so much for just the way that you interact together on screen during this 2-hour live stream, because I feel like my kids are learning about a healthy relationship dynamics, and it's just a good model of how to get along and have a healthy relationship." And I was really touched and grateful that that was what they saw. But I feel, I don't know, everyone's relationships are so different. I feel hesitant to, like, try and offer relationship advice. Also, like, not my area of expertise. Um,
It just comes to you too easily. You don't have to learn how to do it better.
I I feel like when people ask me about our relationship and why it's good, I'll just say, like, "Oh, it's because Serge is amazing." And then I think when people ask him, he says the
Yes,
same thing in reverse.
absolutely. So we do get along really well off screen, and that makes working together great. We do have our own separate spaces that we don't spend all day together. And the dogs always follow Science Mom, by the way. They follow her from room to room, all throughout the house, all day long. But no, we do often sit down together, and we're working in the same room. And
But it is a little bit unique that, like, not every relationship would benefit from working together. I think that's okay. I think some relationships, people do better if they have more space. Um, we enjoy working together,
no,
but yeah, it probably wouldn't work for everyone.
mm. We do make an effort to spend time in each other's areas of interest. Science Mom loves to go hiking. We would go hiking every single day if we could, and I try to go with her pretty regularly. Although not enough. She'll find other friends to go. We even made this Sunday morning botany hike club locally that a lot of
Yeah.
people go to, which has been good because
Then you don't.
I do get a break every once in a while. That's that's right. But yeah, and she spends time in my interests. as well. And so, yeah, relationships do take time and effort, and being able to communicate with each other and talk about things is important. The a silent treatment is not going to serve anyone, or yeah, if you're not communicating, then a relationship is going to struggle. And I think that's something she's done really well,
We
trained me well on.
we did have, we've had some. I had a really bad mental health struggle after our 3rd daughter, our 3rd child was born. I had postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, and I think navigating that together, uh, helped our relationship to be a lot stronger, and it also helped, I in therapy at the time as I was trying to figure out how I don't know, how to get my mind back to a place where I didn't have intrusive thoughts and, this deep depression. Um, it helped me to be able to talk about deeper feelings and then just to be honest about like, okay, this is what I'm struggling with. Here are the ways I think you could support me. And I don't know that not that I would recommend that anybody go through that, but I think the honest communication of being able to be vulnerable and tell him, here's exactly what I'm feeling and here's what I would like you to do to support me. And then as soon as I like got all that off my chest and said it, I would sort of pretend that like I didn't just tell him that because it was so vulnerable. It was hard to say. And and you did a good job of listening and just yeah, being there to support me. He had to take a semester off of his PhD program just because of how bad my mental health was at the time. And for anybody who's experienced postpartum depression, I just yeah, I really want to say like it is a very real biologically driven phenomenon, and it is very, very hard. Like you're not alone. This is something that a lot of women experience.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure if you all saw the movie about the reporters who exposed Harvey Weinstein, but
No, I
there's
didn't.
one of them actually went through a really intense postpartum depression before they wrote that story together. And it's just, she had taken a break from reporting and they cover it really beautifully in the
Mhm.
film. It is something that's not talked out about a lot.
Yeah.
Tense, but yeah, I see the thread of communication here in an unconditional love and acceptance.
Communication
Mm.
is important. And also, I will say that when we first got married, we had discussions about invisible labor at home and and gender roles, because we both grew up in a fairly conservative, traditional, patriarchal kind of traditional culture. And I didn't want to be the parent who did all of the cleaning, all of the cooking, and had all of the household responsibilities all the time. I thought a more equitable division of labor was better, and we had a lot of discussions about that early on. And several times when his parents will visit, they'll sort of comment almost in a disappointed way, like, "Boy, Serge, you do a lot of the housework," like it's a problem.
That's rough. Yeah.
But I think that that more even division of labor has also just helped us to feel like we're more on equal ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Those discussions pay big dividends. Yeah, we've found if we have crazy high expectations, you can't help but be disappointed. So realistic expectations on any aspect of life, whether it's a 1 hour excursion you're doing or a 3 month project, set good, realistic expectations, because, uh, yeah, you can always turn a success into a failure by being unrealistic about things.
For sure. So you've built this business and it strikes me that so many aspects of how this business evolved organically or is the path that I guess it's kind of supposed to take. I mean, Jenny, you identified this need in your community. You've started using YouTube as a way to share content and serve the need. Then there was pretty great timing in terms bad and great of the pandemic kind of expanding your reach and you started bringing in more tools when you found out, okay, maybe YouTube isn't really the way to monetize this. So you brought in the patron. And I just was curious, and then you came along when it started to grow. And is there, Is there any kind of advice you would give? I mean, we have a bunch of teachers in our community. We have, who are doing these online videos and trying to get their business to the point where they can leave and make that their full-time job. Anything else you've learned along the way that might be useful for people who are considering your path?
Definitely, I definitely want to acknowledge just the how fortunate we were with the timing of having some live streaming experience and then like 45 of the states in the United States closing schools on the same weekend. I don't know if we would have made it if we hadn't had that huge boost.
Mm,
Uh, but I think consistency is important and can pay big dividends. You know, if whatever you're able to do in terms of creating lessons, if you try to make something that is consistent and reliable, that really helps for people to come back and find you.
So we did make a pivot to doing almost exclusively live content instead of longer form edited content that took hours and hours to get that 5 minute clip because you're trying to get it perfect. But by transitioning, this worked for us to do live content where it doesn't have to be perfect, but it comes across as very genuine
mm.
and because it is at that point you're just making do with what happens. Sometimes there are bloopers or misstatements. You've got to be a little bit careful there. But that format has worked well for us, and possibly for some others, it would be a good fit. But yeah, find the tools and the niche that works for you. And just because it works for someone else doesn't mean it's going to be your thing.
For
I
sure.
would
Sometimes you just
also
have to put it out there, right?
mhm. And I would also say, um, an email newsletter is better. Email connections are better than social media connections when possible. Social media, as a content creator, it's not reliable. You could be figure out something where, okay, I'm doing process A and B, and then I'm getting reach C, but then all of a sudden the algorithm can change and the same content that you're making will reach nobody. And that's kind of hard as a content creator, and I've seen that happen, since starting with YouTube in 2016. I've seen it happen over and over and over again, and I personally know other creators who have had to either make incredibly big pivots or have left entirely because their monetization was entirely through the algorithm, through how many people the algorithm showed their content to. Whereas creators I know who built an email list and were able to contact their audience directly, that just brings so much more stability.
Such an important point. I know another homeschool creator in this situation who used to get, hundreds of thousands of views on every Instagram, and then all of a sudden just all disappeared.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on one channel like that. So is it the way you have it set it up, you have your website and then people subscribe on the website and then you keep in active communication with them that way?
We honestly, we're right now, we're busy enough building our next geoscience
The
class that
PCC.
I've dropped the ball with regular communication. Regular communication with has not been happening aside from, we have things we do for our patrons every single week year round. That has happened. Everything else I've dropped because 'cause I'm busy making a class. But the I think one of the best things for our business has been our free earth science class. That's a fairly big, in terms of marketing terms, it's our lead magnet. It's like our biggest free thing that people can find and try. And then if it fits, then there's more things that we have that they can purchase. And that has been a pretty good overall model. And I think for other people who are making educational content, having something out there that people can try for free is a really good idea. And then they can get a feel for whether it's a good fit.
I love that, and it's just so aligned with your mission. I mean, what you're giving away for free is the thing that has a lot of social impact as well, teaching people about Earth. We've sold a couple in our our affiliate program, we sold for free, but,
Good.
yes, it's definitely a really good entry point. Wow, wonderful. Oh my gosh, there's so much great stuff here. What's next? Are you building some new classes, something that's gonna come out soon that we can get excited about?
Yes, we are doing a geoscience course and
For middle school ages. So let me actually go through and tell you all the things that we do. So on Patreon, we have a weekly chess club and painting with a scientist
What?
session. Yeah.
So
So,
fun. Okay, good to know.
we do have a ton of fun doing it. So the kids painting with a scientist, they get to come on and share their artwork. And that's so neat to see what they come up with. Currently, we're doing a unit on misunderstood animals, and that's been a lot of fun. In our chess
Love
club, we have
misunderstood animal.
we have a short so a little lesson. We play a 30-minute arena together. We solve some puzzles each week, and yeah, we have tons of fun doing that. So our supporters on Patreon get that benefit, as well as a $25 discount off our courses. So for our courses, for 4th and 5th grade level, we have the free earth science course, we have chemistry, and then for the middle school, we have astronomy. We've got bio 1 and bio 2, and physics
Physics.
1, physics 2, and then we'll be adding a geoscience, and then we'll have covered all of the middle
Hmm.
school
So
science
the
standards.
geoscience class will pair with the astronomy class. So then we'll have the 3 full years of middle school curricula that will cover all of the national science standards for middle school.
And then
Phenomenal.
we also have our math courses, our accelerated grade 6 math, pre-algebra, and algebra 1.
So wonderful. Is there
And
anything I
we're
didn't ask you that you want to share? Anything else we need to cover?
So I must mention, so our geoscience course will
Yes, I.
run for spring 2026, and it'll be run as a live course. But then after we teach it as a live course, it becomes available as a self-paced course from that point on. Um,
Exciting.
but yeah, things I'd like to share is just encouraging parents. So speaking specifically to math, I know sometimes the parent feels like I can't do this, or
Yes.
I don't remember how to do this,
I'm
and
bad at math. I'm not a math person, right? That's the thing we hear a lot.
yeah,
Hmm.
you are not alone in feeling that. You are wrong. You actually can do it, and it's your job, and you're going to need to help your child to realize they can do this. Encourage them. Ask them to teach you. I'm rusty on this. Will you remind me how this worked? That your lack of understanding is an opportunity just as much as it is an obstacle, and I know every parent would love to have some magical product where they can just send their kid and it will do it for them. But as a parent, no, such a thing does not exist. You will need to follow up unless you have that 1 in a million magical kid that doesn't need any oversight. Um, yeah, spend that time learning with your child, follow up with them, celebrate their victories, praise, praise, praise. And yeah, I just want to make sure parents realize that they have an important role, but also it's fun and it's an opportunity to learn as well.
So beautifully put. I mean, I 100% agree with everything you say. I feel like learn with your child. I just want to say that 100 times so people remember it. It doesn't matter what your expertise level is. You can always learn along with your child. And when I was tutoring, they would always tell us the final stage of mastery is student as teacher. And it's such a great way to have your children thinking about that information from a different point of view and really deeply explore how rich their own knowledge is to teach it back to you. It's so good for retention, and you can definitely have that humility to say, "Hey, I didn't really learn this that well in school, and so I kind of want to dive back in." And even if you don't know how to do algebra, you still might know how to learn algebra better than your child. So there's a good starting point. And you have these great resources to support you along the way. Oh, so good. Well, I just want to tell everybody listening that, YouTube has a comment section. So if there's something we didn't cover, please do ask your questions. And I'm assuming maybe you guys would be willing to, dive into
yeah,
the comments with me and
Sure.
see what people have to say. But I mean, I'm going to share all of the links to every single class, and we have them on Modulo. So you can check those out in the comment section as well. And we are an affiliate partner with Science on Math Dad. So if you buy your classes through us, we get a kickback, helps us produce more of this content where I get to have lots of fun interviewing people that I am nerdily fanning out on like you. And, yeah, I just appreciate you both so much. It's such a treat to talk to you live for the first time, and I'm excited about what we can do together this year and in the coming years too.
Thank you, Manisha. And I have to say, I've been very impressed with what you've built with Modulo. I think you've put together a great resource. There's so many options to consider. A lot of times we'll have people ask us questions about like, especially for high school, where do I go from high school? What high school curricula do you recommend? And I I have to say, I'm really sorry. I just don't have a lot of experience there. And I try periodically to like ask on Facebook to kind of ask our community, like, okay, tell me resources you recommend. So having kind of a collection where you've got a curated selection, I think is really helpful to parents. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. It means a lot to me, and it makes it so fun that you all exist. So what is this lovely dog's name?
Oh, so this is Kaladin. I don't know if the audio picked it up, but he was standing over in the corner of the room staring at me whining because he wanted to be held.
Oh,
So
I
that
didn't
was
hear
why
it at
a minute
all,
ago I
but
went and picked him up.
he's lovely. He's
Yeah, he's
lovely.
5
Oh,
years old and very much a sweetheart. Both of our dogs, I'll grab the other one real quick. He's right down here. They
yes,
both
please. I I will not be forgiven by our audience if we don't see both dogs.
They feature
Oh
in a
my
lot of
gosh,
our
wow.
video
So
lessons. So
sweet.
if you have a kid who likes dogs, um, getting to see a little silly video of one of these two at the end of the lesson, I know for some kids that's a big motivator.
Yep, so we got Kaladin and Lopen.
Yeah.
That-
Goodness. Oh my gosh, you guys are so cute. Okay, what did we leave out? Anything else? I think we're good.
I don't think so. I think we're good. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank you
having us
so
on.
much. It's been such a delight, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thank
Bye.